firstly to the audience. You seem really still engaged in the event, and really appreciate you guys being here all this time. Since all of you already know really, very details about Melanie, right from the time she was 5 years old, let's go to Shraddha. And if you can just give us a little bit, let the audience know a little bit about yourself.
Hello and good evening, everyone. So, just to give you a little context, I started my career in advertising in India, and I worked on Unilever brands, and then quickly moved on to launching a business news channel. After a few years, I dabbled my way back into FMCG because I realized I love FMCG a lot more than news and television. So I was working with an Indian bottled water brand called Bisleri, and then moved on to selling wine, from water to wine. That was a huge transition for me. India has a wine brand called Sula, so I was working with Sula for a few years. And then I have just moved, 4 years ago, I moved on to banking to try a different sector altogether. And so I've been with 811, which is a completely digital bank, for the last 4 years.
Thank you. So it gives me a great pleasure to have a conversation with both of you ladies. And it's ironic that we're all ladies on the stage. So, given elevator digital media and the power of it, right? It's interesting that we have a marketeer on stage from a brand, as well as we have somebody who's actually worked across multiple areas, right, in out-of-home. What I'd like to do is, kind of have your perspective about how you see this fitting into an overall omni-channel strategy. Maybe we start with Shraddha first.
Okay. So from an omni-channel perspective, elevated digital media has a very powerful space, according to me. It brings about two very important features, which is frequency and undivided attention, which as a marketer, I'm striving to get from the consumer. Across the media platforms that I choose in my marketing mix, I've noticed that there's a lot of clutter and they're very transient. So elevated digital media gives me a moment of stillness to plant a message in the consumer's mind. It is a moment of intimacy between the brand and the consumer in a very confined environment. And I know exactly who I'm talking to. It's not like I'm doing a guessing game over there. Within the scope of omnichannel, it is used, I especially use it as a frequency builder and to retarget the audience as an amplifier to my main campaign. And it actually closes the loop when the ad shows up in the physical space.
Absolutely.
Because if the person has seen the ad on YouTube or Instagram the night before or the moment they've woken up in the morning and they get into the elevator and they see this ad, it reinforces, It's like a very safe space to feel a reliable message coming to you. And someone, I think, mentioned that in their presentation, that because this ad is being displayed over here in this medium of a digital elevator, somebody has actually approved these ads. So I think that really helps.
It also lends very nicely to the previous speaker who talked about creating top of mind, right?
Absolutely.
So Danisa talked about top of mind, and that fits very, well in this.
And it influences the intent of the customer.
Absolute. And I think we can, attribute to all of this, and Mel, you mentioned this in your presentation, right? In terms of rapid urbanization that's led to the increase in all kinds of out-of-home, but especially elevated digital media, right? So maybe you can talk us through some of those numbers that you see in terms of what's happened across the world, right? Not just in APAC and across the world, years.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we step back 10 years, when we were looking at elevator media, a majority was static. But in out-of-home media, there's been a rapid digitization, and for digital elevator media, rapid urbanization. So the combination of the two has been really powerful for the medium, where previously it would have just been considered a static media, potentially used for reach and frequency, but a static message. Still a good environment, but digitization has actually, to pun intended, elevated the media because the the capability of the media has now been incredibly enhanced. So we still have great reach and frequency, but we also now have the capability to change out the message. And I was having a conversation with somebody a few weeks ago about also the screen capability of even being able to do 3D-like creative. So being able to now produce contextually relevant creative multiple times a day even, or in some countries you can do it within 30 seconds, you can change the commercial over. It's now become more powerful than ever.
Yeah, and across the world as well, right? We talked about, the percentage of basically door versus out of home and how that has also shifted. And that's primarily because of that rapid urbanization. And especially in APAC, right, and all our markets in APAC, it's been growing at an exponential level.
Yes, the last week the World Out of Home Organisation met for the Global Congress, and Tom, who's the president of World Out of Home, he talked about the latest figures from 2024, now published in 2025, and the digitisation is absolutely increasing, and Asia Pacific is leading the way in that, which is really exciting. But also the revenue from that is also increasing, which to me indicates that marketers are more and more trusting of the media. They're also harnessing the capability of digital and also looking at each of the media in isolation as well as integrated way.
Do you think that COVID led to that rapid urbanization and change towards, well, not the urbanization piece, but more the movement to digital out of home? Did that accelerate it?
It's an excellent question. I think COVID changed many things for many people, and from a marketing perspective, completely upturned how we looked at people movement and people behaviours and attitudes, and then how we do campaigns when people are potentially, located in their home and nowhere else. In terms of the urbanisation, I think that this is just a natural progression of the development of countries and people wanting to have their own place. And in some countries, that's moving at a much more rapid pace because the population is growing so fast, and we need to put them in homes and apartments. And I talk a lot about Singapore because I lived in Singapore for 4 years as well, and travelled a lot around Asia. And Singapore, for example, when we do elevated digital media, we can reach 83% of the population in a week, because majority of them are living in apartments because there's small land mass, so they have to go up rather than out. And that is happening in a lot of countries where there's very tall buildings being built, taller than what used to be built 25 years ago, and now they're all got information screens inside them and on the outside as well.
So more time in those elevators. So speaking to a brand marketeer over here, how has your perception changed using elevated digital media? Because just out-of-home media per se compared to digital, right? And your thoughts on the spends as well and moving around them, and any kind of, main kind of drivers?
It's changed gradually over time. Post-COVID, especially the environment and scene in India for elevator digital marketing had started just shifting. We didn't have many digital screens before, even in out-of-home. But having said that, if you look at the number of screens in the last 3 years that multiple media owners have set up in digital out-of-home as well as elevator digital media, it gives me the momentum to give creatives and reach out to communication in an innovative way. It's another platform where I can make customized creatives and do a positioning of my campaign in a different way, in a different environment to them. So compared to a few years ago, my latest campaign actually has about 10% in elevator digital medium, in IT parks, in residential areas, because I can customize my messaging for tech parks and IT parks, and I can customize my message for residential for the same campaign, and it gives me that agility.
Yeah, we should talk about the customization a little later, because we spoke about that at length, right? Because one size does not fit all, and marketers should not be doing that. But in terms of the macro growth drivers, like Mel, from a global perspective, like what are you seeing? And then Shraddha, we can take it from an India perspective, because what we're showing everybody is right now the India perspective, right? So let's start with you, Mel.
So for digital out-of-home media, the digitisation is definitely there's a lot of push from media owners and also from their agency partners and brands, and also the conversion from static sites and converting them to digital.
Yeah.
There's a few main drivers of that I've seen from a media owner perspective, and that is that it helps grow their business, being able to convert a static site that is 100% share of voice through to a digital site that is a share of time sharing with other brands. It means that they can grow their business with increasing revenue without having to implement a lot of capex to build more and more sites and screens. And however, the capability of those digital screens definitely match the power of a static as well. So that's from the media owner perspective. And from agencies and brands, what I've heard from them is that they're just looking for higher quality sites and making sure that their brands are being seen on high quality inventory, and digital screens, brand new digital screens, are absolutely beautiful. I mean, even looking around actually Ho Chi Minh last night, I was so impressed with some of the digital screens.
Yeah.
And having a brand
Beautiful.
up there absolutely gives that brand fame. Having it, 40 by 40 metres and, elevated in beautiful pixels, it's absolutely beautiful. So, so from agencies and brands, they're looking for quality inventory.
Yeah. And from an India level, right? From an
India perspective, the number has increased.
Yeah.
Urbanization is happening. People are moving a lot more from the rural areas in search of work to tier 2 cities, to metros. And not just that, the income parity has increased. So people are moving into vertical gated communities. So the opportunity to have more screens has increased. Therefore, media owners are giving out more inventory to us as marketers, and overall the economy is helping and supporting the growth of digital elevator media.
Yeah, and those gated communities are important because then it's like a safe space for your media to exist without it being vandalized.
Yes, from
right?
a
which is
owner point of view,
yeah.
I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think for emerging markets specifically, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, this has led to, of course, the revenues growing exponentially, right, Mel? And you were talking to, the overall WOO numbers that you received, and it's crossed like what, almost 18 billion US dollars?
That's right. So once again, World Out of Home was talking about the global digitisation of assets and the fact that the revenue attributed to that is starting to outweigh the revenue from static sites, which logically makes sense. But it's a really interesting shift in the overall global out-of-home media with all the assets included. However, some regions are not digitising as fast because it is an expensive exercise, and also it's not just putting in one digital screen, it's also making sure that it's maintained or replaced. So I do know there was a period of time where there were digital screens that you couldn't see if you wore Polaroid sunglasses. They actually showed up blank. But that was old technology. So just making sure that they're investing in that. But for the industry as a whole, it's a great move because more revenue means more investment in the inventory, more investment in great people, which means an overall better service and quality of asset for brands and agencies.
Yeah. So shifting gears a little bit, and you spoke about all of this, right, in your presentation earlier. But I think, Shraddha, I mean, maybe Mel, you can just kind of give us an overview again in terms of, the mindset and performance. And for Shraddha, I'd like to kind of talk about more from a brand marketeer perspective, right? It's not just about all of these various levers, but it's also about the creative side of it, right? How do you use it effectively when you have everybody's attention? So let's start with you, Mel, just to kind of just round that out a bit.
Yes, absolutely. So for as many campaigns as possible, and I cannot tell you how many campaigns I've actually planned with the team or implemented. I have lost count. But we try to do research in as many of them as possible because we're always trying to learn and test and learn sometimes, especially if it's a new asset or new location or new way of doing the creative. But each and every time we've done research, this private contained environment has always had these amplified results which is really exciting. But then when you combine it with, other reach and frequency media or an integrated campaign, it absolutely contributes to the overall result. And some of the results that I showed today, it's across different categories, it's across different countries, so it's not just confined to, say, Australia, it's actually across the world where these results are being seen and proven. And then, of course, we see here with the multiplier effect that Vietnam is actually overperforming in terms of the global average for the number of times used and also for the dwell time. So all of that, I think, contributes to the fact that it does work, but also going right back to the very beginning of the day, that we should always be doing as much research as possible to try and understand performance and then sharing that as much as possible as well.
Absolutely. So in terms of because you have people in a captive environment, right, it also lends nicely to, the kind of creative, and we spoke about this briefly, in terms of how the creative should not be a one-size-fits-all. And since we have this medium performing very effectively, what would you as a brand marketeer, right?
So to add to what I said a few moments ago, it's not about just customizing the messaging to the medium, but also making it contextual for the consumer. It has to be crisp, but at the same time, it has to resonate emotionally. So if it resonates emotionally, he's going to keep it in mind stronger. And when he has the intent to buy, you're the first brand that's going to pop up in his head because you connected with him at some level or her at some level. And it's not about just the ads. It's also like, it's not about making ads. It's about having this micro conversation from a brand's perspective with your audience. So these are micro conversations. So if you make them interesting, if you make them a little witty and not just functional and benefit-led, it has to have that desire to want to be a part of the brand, to connect with the brand. So messaging has to build, the objective of every brand is to create a community. And messaging helps you connect with the right kind of people to build your own community.
Correct.
So,
and how does that work effectively across the funnel in this case, right? So where do you see this helping in the entire marketing funnel?
So as a marketer, I like to look at every medium through the funnel lens. And elevator digital medium has the unique ability to get frequency. It's a frequency builder, and it helps in not only allowing you to communicate your message in a controlled environment. So at the top of the funnel, the awareness that I need to build is really strong. And Mel spoke about priming in her presentation. And that's a good way to prime your customer along with the multiple media mix that you have used across marketing mix that we have used. A digital elevator medium gives that added amplifier effect to what we're trying to do. It also brings salience for the brand. And when you go to the middle of the funnel, it's about the messaging. And we just spoke how it has to be sharp and crisp. And if it's tailor-made, it can really outperform a lot of other mediums if the messaging is right. At the bottom of the funnel, which is where the ROI and where is the money gone, can you tell me how many number of conversions you have got, how many accounts you've opened, all that asking. And while Rohit earlier mentioned that why put a QR code if there is no network in the mobile, the mobile doesn't have network in the elevator. But as a marketer, I'm still going to put that QR code because I'm hoping to get some engagement, if not while he or she is in the elevator, but he might click a picture and maybe interact with me later. But also from a perspective of driving traffic to my website, I would love to leave the consumer behind with some way of communicating or engaging back with me, either on social media or either through a QR code, and have the conversion at the bottom of the funnel.
Absolutely. So that drives very, nicely into the piece you talked about in terms of campaign performance, particular categories, right? So, that could you kind of elaborate a little bit on why jewelry and software?
Well, they were just some examples that I was able to share. As you can see, I don't share the brand because they want to be very careful about what their performance is against competitors. But always when I did research, when I was running the research data and insights team at AdShell, we always split it by at least 10 categories because we know that the performance within those categories and the type of advertising, the type of target audiences, they're all different. But every single category uplifted, which was very encouraging to varying degrees. Some performed better than others. Entertainment was a really strong category. And FMCG was a really strong category as well, especially when they were placed in areas in proximity to being able to purchase the product. So making sure that it was available in the store, but the proximity was a really key driver when we got really into the weeds on the data. That proximity was a big driver too. But these ones that I had up here, the software particularly, whilst it may say 45% recall for some brands, may be really low because you've got a high recall already when you start. But for this client, that was significantly higher than what they were anticipating, and because it was a new software brand. And then also for the jewellery client, they had elevated digital media combined with airport media, and the performance continued on after the campaign had completed on the elevated digital media, which in other research that we've done, that shows there's a long tail effect. So when you flight correctly, or when you finish a campaign, that the out-of-home media often gives a longer tail effect and performance afterwards. So yeah, always we would split by at least 10 different categories, and we always had uplift.
Thank you, the both of you. I think that nicely segues into the end of our conversation. And I think all I can say is that the uniqueness and strength of elevated digital media is definitely here to grow. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.